Hello, everyone. Welcome to the partnerships panel of the Collegiate Rising UConnect Winter, powered by Twitch Student. Thank you guys so much for coming. We have an amazing panel planned for you today. I mean, look at all these friendly faces up here. So just very quickly, we're going to cover 3 different topics. The first one being the path to partnership. How do you get into the partnerships ecosystem of esports? We'll talk a little more finely next about the skills and aptitudes that will help you gain some of these roles, and we'll end off with industry insights. But before we get into all of these questions, I would love for you to meet everyone that's up here with me. So we'll do some introductions. We're in a bit of a funny shape up here, so I'll start, and then I think we'll go Skye, Garvey, and finish the curve that way. So my name is Sarah Wagg. I'm the DC Esports Arena Manager and a esports professor at Durham College.
Hi, everyone. My name is Skye. I'm the Senior Partnerships Coordinator at TSM.
Hi, everybody. I'm Garvey. I'm the Director of Student Education Programs at Twitch.
Hi, I'm Frank Fields. I'm the Senior Sponsorships and Esports Manager at Corsair.
Hey, everyone. Greg Fraser. I'm the Partnerships Manager at Cloud9.
So as you can see, we have some industry veterans up here to answer your questions that you have been burning up about when it comes to partnerships. So at any time during this panel, make sure you throw those questions down in the Twitch chat because we will be pulling them and answering at the end of our moderated discussion. So to kick things off, I was going to pick on you first, Garvey, with your almost 7 years now experience when it comes to partnerships. And also I'd like to get Skye's input on this as well to give the 2 different perspectives. But the question I'm looking to kick it off with is partnerships roles are some of the most sought after positions when it comes to the esports industries. But for students who are interested in this field, there's not a very clearly defined pathway to get into working in partnerships. So I wanted to ask you first, Garvey, followed by you, Skye. Could you talk a little bit about what it is you do on a day-to-day basis in your role, as well as just how did you land yourself this position? How did you get into it? So Garvey, let's kick you off.
So I got into it. It's a long story, but I've actually been in gaming and esports for about 26 years. I started with partnerships in maybe 2011. And it was just because it was a new industry. I had a very broad network. I knew quite a bit about the industry, and it just made sense for me to work with people coming onto platforms, people coming into the industry, to share some of my knowledge and kind of create a bridge between the gap in knowledge and where we are and where we're going. What do I do every day is I work with partners, and we have to classify really 2 different kinds of partnerships, right? There's B2B, business to business, and B2C, business to community. And there are 2 different roles. I hover between the 2. I see partnerships. I work with endemics and non-endemics. I introduce them to the student space, and I'll just talk about what I currently do, not what I've done prior with the professional scene. But just to make sure that there's some awareness of what's going on in the student education space, why it's very interesting for businesses to be a part of it. So it's a lot more business oriented. Business to community is probably the role that most people do. And the way I see it, it's a bridge between community and content creators and the business entity themselves. So a lot of my day-to-day thinking is, okay, how can I be of service to the partners that I work with, but also feed my tiger, right? So it's very important that community and content creators are being well taken care of, well looked after, but it's a fine line when you have to make sure that there's business KPIs for the platform to continue operating and being of service to the community. So it's quite a fine line, and I just make sure that I devote a lot of time to making sure, again, I build a bridge between the wants and needs of my partners and the wants and needs of my company, and to feed my tigers. So it's a balancing act, and I think it just takes time to understand exactly what the business needs to keep operating, and then find ways to make sure that you can be of service to your community and they know your situation, the platform situation, and how we could work together to make sure that everybody's working towards a goal. For Twitch, I'm lucky that the goal of Twitch is to support the community and to support content creators. But still, I have to be cognizant that I do have tigers to feed. And even Twitch now, that Amazon has purchased it, Twitch has got tigers to feed. So a lot of what I do is a balancing act and creating bridges between the two.
It seems like the Twitch chat is dubbed you the new Tiger King with all of the chat with tigers going on. But Skye, I'd like to see your opinion when it comes to the day-to-day as well as how you fell into this role.
Yeah, awesome. So how I fell into this role, when I first started, everything about 3 to 4 years ago, I was brought onto a brand that some of you may be familiar with, Echo Fox. I was actually working on the just mainly like branding and social media side. So from that end, we started bringing on more partners and we needed help in that sense. And I was brought on to do more account management. Because of that, I realized like, even though I've done like branding and social media, I really enjoy working and connecting with like the community and with the non-endemics and endemic partners. Because of that, I think that's where I was like, okay, well, my strengths are at social media and branding, but I'm going to do some troubleshooting, try to learn more about the partnership side. And, it's been a ride. I'm finally, working here at TSM. It's a great brand and I'm really excited to be here and, show what everyone is, what about in that sense. In terms of day-to-day basis, I work closely with our partners to, at the end of the day, make sure that the partnership is good to go and they are happy. This involves like daily communication with the clients to plan, execute, and report on deliverables, working with our internal stakeholders within the company to make sure that the campaigns and just overall contractual obligations are aligned in that sense. So outside of that, my favorite part of the partnership side is creating exciting campaigns that most of the public eye may see, whether it's on social media, Twitch, Twitter, all of that stuff. That is like what I do in terms of working with other departments, whether it's the content team or the social media team. Those are some of the roles that I've taken on.
Okay, so it ties everything a little bit together. That actually relates to our next question that, Greg, I think you would be a great fit for. The partnerships role tends to apply to someone who is very well connected and utilize those networks because it's a lot of back and forth. So is this a role, Greg, in your opinion, a role that you can start out in, or is it a role that you move into after you have experience with some other roles under your belt first and you've built up your own network?
Yeah, I hate to almost give a bit of a non-answer, but you can definitely go both ways, right? I think Skye kind of showcased it beautifully, starting out in social media and eventually transitioning into partnerships that way. Having a well-established network is never a bad thing, but I wouldn't exactly say it's a hard prerequisite for getting into partnerships. I think there's a ton of opportunity for lateral movement within esports. I kind of a weird way, I started working on the back end of the partnerships team, doing like data analytics and basically prepping all of the reporting and decks. And eventually I built the skill set to kind of be on the forward facing, more public end of partnerships. So there's definitely the ability to move. Never a bad thing to network and have that coming in, but it's definitely not a hard prerequisite.
Okay, and building upon that question, Frank, what do you think are some of the most common roles that can lead you into partnerships?
I actually found it easiest in my experience to have backgrounds in operations, at least coming from the brand perspective, because most of my job is scouting for good opportunities and partners that I think are operating in a way in which they can execute on our partnership well. And having that experience on the team side and operations lets me know who's actually able to do that most effectively. You can also very easily make the transition from sales as you're working with very similar people. Often that's kind of the other side of the conversation, is people doing outbound sales to try to get in contact with people like myself. And a lot of times if you want to make the jump to account management, you're very familiar with that part of the process, and then you're just kind of learning new skills about, depending on which side, fulfillment or follow-up and deliverable tracking and things like that. But I wouldn't say that necessarily there's any particular role that you have to have done before. I do think that it's a lot easier to transition to partnerships just from having a lot of experience in the industry in general, but I wouldn't say that there's a specific role that you had to have as long as you're building up your skill sets for things that you actually need to complete the job.
Perfect. It sounds like all four of you guys are in consensus that when it comes to partnerships, you don't have to feel pressured that right out of school you've got to land your dream job and be ready to go. It sounds like there very much are different ways to get into partnerships as long as you have that long-term goal and drive to get there. So with that in mind, after talking about pathways, I'd like to move into some of the hard and soft skills that would be beneficial for students to have working in the partnerships role, or if they're looking to move into the space. So when they're in these interviews looking for partnership related roles, what are some of the biggest skill sets?
Did we lose someone?
I think we might have lost Sarah.
Well, Frank, why don't I ask you what if you're looking when you're interviewing,
Yeah.
right? What kind of skill sets, attributes, markers are you looking for in candidates?
I mean, a lot. I'd say the most two important attributes I'm looking for are personal organization, personal/professional organization, people that are really good at project management. I find that a lot of people who are stern negotiators or play hardball when it comes to doing partnerships are sometimes not able to get the most out of the partnerships once they're actually being fulfilled. And I find that people who are able to show empathy and are able to really connect with their partners are able to get the most out of those partnerships. So, and that's also going to drive more brand loyalty long term. So that's generally the two biggest attributes that I'm looking for when people are interviewing with me.
Right.
Yeah.
And Gregory, what do you think about the soft skills? So that's a really ill-defined area of expertise. How much do you value soft skills, and what kind of soft skills are you looking for, and how can students represent those soft skills? Because I know a lot of companies look at recent graduates as independent contributors. How would a student be able to emphasize the soft skills that they may learn in some of these programs now?
Yeah. I think Frank did a great job of kind of like highlighting the kind of higher level skills that are kind of always expected of partnerships managers, organization, critical thinking, all that jazz. I'm so glad that you brought up empathy, Frank. That's such a good one. Cannot stress that one enough. Being able to make human connections with your partners and internally within your organization is super important, because we're acting within the partnerships realm. We act as kind of the transmission of concepts between your organization and external partners, and so being able to have strong personal relationships with all those people is super key. One thing that I would definitely recommend looking into, and this is something that I value when kind of analyzing potential candidates, is versatility. Partnerships if you find yourself in a partnerships position, you will be collaborating a ton internally and externally, whether it's with graphics, content, team managers, social media. And depending on the array of partnerships that your organization has in its portfolio, a ton of potentially non-endemic brands. And so having some sort of versatile skill set, whether it's in graphic design or computer programming, that can help that can lend itself to make informed decisions when you're working through these partnerships. Is super, super valuable. It's definitely not a hard kind of prerequisite that you need to get into esports partnerships, but kind of adding that to your skill set is definitely a good way to kind of separate yourself from the general candidacy.
Oh, it looks like I'm back. Thank you, everyone,
Welcome
for the yes in the chat.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Thank you, Garvey, for stepping in as backup host, and shout out to Greg for being doppelganger Sarah in the Twitch video for a second there. But I'm glad everything went out with a hitch while my power took a blip on me. So I thankfully got to catch that answer. Thank you guys so much. I wanted to tag on to the back of that for backup host Garvey. When it comes to most young professionals and entry-level candidates, what are they missing that makes them ill-prepared to take on partnerships?
So I think the number one thing is to graduate and feel empowered and confident in yourself. This way, you can and be able to express that. So we talked a little about soft skills before. How can you represent yourself to a potential employer? And then when you do land the job, how do you represent not only yourself, but your company to prospective partners, right? So I think it's a lot with how you represent yourself and how you feel about yourself. So how can you find ways to feel good about yourself, your knowledge base, the pathway that you've created for yourself, to be able to inspire confidence in yourself and the company that you represent, and vice versa, confidence your company has in you finding partners that can really come out and represent their particular community, their point of view, or whatever contributions they will make to the industry. And I think a lot of that comes from inside, right? So I always take a step back and I say, it's a little weird for me that a lot of people take how they feel about themselves from external forces. I'm of the mind that if you're really confident in yourself, if you really love yourself, it will give you the ability to be confident in others and love others, and at the same time, inspire confidence in yourself from others, inspire love and all that. So I think that's the number one thing, is feel good about yourself, right? Be able to represent yourself well, be able to emphasize the soft skills that being part of an esports program at a university teaches you, right? Then be able to go and have the portfolio that has the qualitative and quantitative data, because we're in digital media, right? Everything that students are doing can be qualified and quantified, right? So how do you represent yourself? You feel good about yourself. How do you inspire that in others? To get the job, it's the cover letter that accentuates the soft skills. It's the portfolio that shows that you're not a recent graduate, right? You're a young professional in the business of XYZ, right? So I think that's the number one thing, right? Is inspire people, inspire potential employers, inspire potential partners. And Frank said it. I'm big into empathy. I hate EQ, right? It's just a fancy way to say empathy. So yeah, that's my number one piece of advice, is when you're getting into partnerships, when you're getting into anything in life, feel good about yourself. Take advantage of the time that you have in university, right? Build up your cover letter, right? If you're a marketing student, go out, work with the esports program, and come up with a digital media strategy, right? This is all going to have data that you could put in your portfolio. So the cover letter shows the soft skills, the portfolio shows the hard skills. So now you won't be seen as an independent contributor, recent graduate. You'll be seen as a team playing young professional in the business of creating these bridges between content creators, companies, partnerships, and the company that you work for. Hopefully to everybody's great benefit. And that's where empathy comes. I feel for my boss. I feel for my partners, right? I want to make them both happy. It's a little bit more work for me, but it can be done. But that first step is having that empathy to think of others while you have that confidence in yourself.
Life advice and wisdom from Garvey. All of your mentees at last night's mentor roundtables are very lucky.
I'm a philosopher by nature.
Yeah, I'd listen to a Garvey podcast, just 24 hours of Garvey. I'm in. And we also have the career fair later tonight, actually, just since we've talked so much about hiring careers pathways. So make sure you guys do stick around to check that out later today. But I know that's a lot of high-level, high-tier advice to follow up on, Skye. But what, for you, is the best advice that you want to give to students that you see who are currently in school? They're graduating soon. So what advice do you have when they are building up their network? How do you network to make these connections, to meet great people like all of you up here? So what are some of the best places to go, events to go to, or just how do they go about building that positive supporting network?
Well, first and foremost, shouts out to Garvey. I already feel very inspired after that amazing speech. That being said, segueing into networking and outreaching. So I think it's really important, and it's really awesome that we're having like creative programs and platforms that are being created in the collegiate space. For example, shouts out to UConnect for creating this awesome program to, inspire and help out a lot of collegiate or just college students who are interested in the esports space. The Discord is filled with a lot of veteran professionals. So that being said, feel free to reach out to any of us. Like, we're around. We're happy to give any advice that you might, need or want in that sense. I think another place that is a great start in terms of trying to figure out how you can network is, I think we're all familiar, LinkedIn. Find a brand that you are interested in working in, or find a brand that you are aware of that you want to learn more about. They usually have a LinkedIn page. You can go there. They'll have like this cool list where it shows everyone that works there. You can take a look at there. Maybe you want to see like more content creation like roles and you want to learn more about that, or you want to learn more about sales and partnerships. Look into those roles and see who works in that space and reach out to them. I know it sounds really, really intimidating, but trust me, I assure you it is not. It is awesome that you're reaching out, and that is the first step in terms of networking. Send a message, say like, hey, I'm a college student. I'm very interested in working in esports, particularly in partnerships. And I want to learn more. How did you get into esports? What kind of advice that you could give to me in terms of learning about that field? Getting that type of mentorship and just putting yourself out there is really important to just people like us in the field. We want to see more of the future generation get into esports. And to do that, we want you guys to outreach. We want you guys to network with us. And I think it's great that, I've been seeing that happen a lot more often. And I just hope that we see that a lot in the future. And I think lastly, what's really awesome, and when I was in college, I wish I had that type of mentorship where I felt that confidence and I can reach out to somebody and say, hey, like, I want to learn more about partnerships. I want to learn more about content creation. Like, how can I get into those steps? So again, shouts out to like UConnect and many of the collegiate programs that are being created to help you guys get into this field and space.
Oh, wow. I'm never qualified to give life advice ever again. You guys are way too good at this.
There's another interesting aspect of networking. It's called targeted networking. So if you're going to go to a PAX, if you're going to go to a Twitch party, you generally know who's going to be there, what company is going to be there. So even to this day, I'll do a little research on who's going to be there, what they're about, and I'll have a think about, okay, what would I say to this person to make them a little curious about what I'm doing and what students are doing? And then casually at some point during the weekend or the evening, I'll make my way over there, introduce myself. Don't be shy. Again, have that confidence in yourself. Come in, introduce yourself, and just leave with an idea that you have of a problem that you've identified you can, resolve. And then if they come back to you, it's great, but at least you have that initial conversation where they know you know who they are, they know you've done your homework, and you've gone through the lengths of identifying a problem they might have and a way they might help them resolve it. We're not in the business of guessing anymore. There's a lot of older people in this industry. I'm 50 years old myself. I'm not in the habit of guessing. I like to be told what to do. And most of our community on Twitch, the average age is 25 years old, right? So why am I guessing what a 25-year-old might want when I can hire or listen and just do what I'm told? And that's a big value of networking as well for employees as well. For me to learn more, I would love students to introduce themselves to me and say, have you thought about doing this way? And then walk away from me. And I'm like, I got a question for you.
And I actually just wanted to add something to that. Coming in with a plan for specific events, for after parties, that applies to people on the brand side as well. So for instance, when we're doing an event like TwitchCon, we have very specific things that we want to do at that event. We have very specific ways that we want to target our messaging for people, things that we want to learn from people. A lot of times we'll go into a PAX and say, okay, well, we want to hear about what people want in keyboards in the next 18 months. And just ask people when they're coming by, like, oh, what are things that you're liking or not liking about our current product suite? When we go to TwitchCon, we say, what are things that streamers are having difficulty with that we can help solve? There's very specific ideas that you can go into an event with or try to get out of an event. And I think having a plan, whether you're a brand, whether you're an individual, and seeking out that kind of information is something that's really helpful. Don't just go to an event and say, well, I guess, I'm just going to enjoy it and see what happens. You need to have a clear idea of what you're hoping to get out of it, what you're hoping to learn, how you're hoping to grow, who you're hoping to connect with by going there, and really make sure you're making these decisions intentionally to help advance your career or your business.
I like to say it's 90% preparation, 10% perspiration. So don't just walk through life haphazardly. Right? This is a old Brooklyn saying, but 90% preparation, 10% perspiration. Make all your successes seem mysterious and magical. And that comes through preparation and thinking ahead of time.
Perfect. I'm expecting a motivational book now too, Garvey. You keep inspiring all of us.
They call it Garveyisms. It's embarrassing, but they call it Garveyisms.
Okay, my shower thoughts aren't even that good.
Yeah, the first one that they started pinning me down is when I was saying back in 2011, your network is your net worth.
You're ahead of your
time.
I
remember that one. One.
Yeah.
I do want to touch on some industry insights before we move into Q&A. So I have two more questions that I'd like to pose to you all up here at the panel. And I'd like to do 2 and 2. So for the first one, what are some of the most common mistakes that companies make when dealing with non-endemics? Or are the problems and barriers in the industry when it comes to non-endemics? So are there mistakes or barriers that people wanting to come into the organizational side of it when it comes to esports? That was a little convoluted of a question. Let's see if I can simplify it. What are the most common mistakes non-endemic companies make when coming into the esports space? And I want to target this one towards Greg first.
Yeah, no, I mean, specifically over the past handful of years, you definitely have seen a large uptick in non-endemic brands kind of like dipping their toes into esports. I think like kind of Garvey alluded to, we have a pretty unique demographic within esports that is pretty sought after from a marketing perspective. And when it comes to our role as the partnership, as like a partnership manager or partnership coordinator, Garvey did an excellent job of kind of visualizing this. It's all about building a bridge. And oftentimes, Garvey, I'm gonna steal your analogy.
What's mine is yours. What's mine is yours, my friend.
Thank you. I would say that a lot of the times, a common mistake is to try to build that bridge a little too quickly without testing the foundation and making sure that your plan is solid. And that's where us as the kind of representatives native to esports, we are here to shepherd these kind of non-endemic brands into the space and kind of guide them without taking too ambitious of a step that could potentially backfire. I know there's probably a dozen instances of brands who kind of plant a flag a little too quickly and get a little bit of pushback from the community. That's definitely something that you see happen very, very frequently. And the simple solution is just be a little bit more thoughtful. We're super fortunate at Cloud9 to have a portfolio of partners who, from a non-endemic perspective, are willing to listen to our guidance and collaborate and build things with us to help build up that sentiment within the general esports community to really make it a genuine partnership.
And it's not a panel unless we get both the Cloud9 and the TSM opinion on the same question. So, Skye, I'd like to pose the same question to yourself as well. Are there any barriers to entry or mistakes that you see non-endemic companies making while coming into the industry?
Well, Gregory said it perfectly. In terms of non-endemics, they're not experienced or well-knowledged in the esports field, and they're excited to be a part of this community. So us as a partnerships team and the sales team we have to be the guiding light for these brands, so they understand and they don't get burned at the end of the day, and they have positive community reception in that sense. So at the end of the day, there's so many different processes that we can create to help them guide that, whether it's in the negotiation side, we set up those expectations that this is how the community will receive certain deliverables and contractual obligations. So let's try to meet in the middle. Let's create, as Garvey said, that bridge to connect our brand and also the non-endemic brands for sure.
I want to sneak in one last question before I pass it over to Twitch chat for some questions. But while we go through this next question, Twitch chat, if you guys want to start sneaking your questions in early, feel free to do that, and then we'll just track them and ask them after this last one that I have for both Garvey and Frank. So going back to students now, many students we're seeing actually start up their own companies, a lot of startups being created by students, which is phenomenal, or getting their foot in the door, working with smaller companies to start. What would be your most important advice to small companies looking to pitch to some of the bigger and what seems like more intimidating brands? So if Garvey, if you want to take a stab first, and then we'll pass it off to Frank.
Yeah, I would say one is, again, have that confidence in yourself. You want to inspire people to be inspired by you, right? Two is make sure you're understanding what they're doing and what they're not doing, so you can identify a problem to solve for. The third, and I think it's probably the most important, and again, this might be a very Brooklyn way to think, but undersell, overperform as much as you can. So set proper expectations, right? But always undersell, overperform.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. Very similarly, I always say that it's very important for them to just kind of operate at scale, if that makes sense. Don't promise to be anything that you're not. Don't expect more return than you're actually worth at the time. There is, speaking for me, and I'm sure Garvey's the same, we love to grow our partners and grow with our partners. But that doesn't mean that we can always start at the level of support or the level of operations for where we think the destination will be. We have to start at a point, prove value over time, and build the partnership up into something that we want it to be. So you can start with something very small, activate on a few things. And I actually prefer this. It's a lot harder for me as someone who's dealing with a lot of internal stakeholders to try to pitch a 7-figure deal with something right away. It's a lot easier to start on a few smaller activations, especially with startup companies, and doing kind of co-marketing activities and other small events, and building that over time to show value both to me as the person who's the primary point of contact and the internal stakeholders that are looking at this from the outside without the expertise that I have. And they can say, what is this? What has this gotten for us so far? And you can very confidently answer, these are the events we've worked on. This has been our return on it. And then you can get additional investment to grow over time as the scale of the organization builds up, as the scale of the operations build up. And then you both kind of flourish in these new avenues of both of your businesses at the same time.
I always learn so much from these panels. Frank, well said.
Thanks, Garvey.
Perfect. I'd love to switch over to some Q&A with the last 15 minutes or so that we have left in this panel. Let's get some Fs in the chat. We lost Skye and her power as well. It's taken a lot of us. Be safe, rest of you panelists. But the first question that I'd like to start out with is, how often do you seek out B2B, business-to-business partnerships? And if you do, what qualities do you look for in them? And this one is open season. If anyone wants to take a stab at it first, please help yourself.
Hello.
Oh, you're back.
Yay! Welcome back.
Welcome back.
All right.
I can take a stab at this one first.
Please do.
I wouldn't say that there is a kind of specific amount of B2B partnerships that we look for per se. I think we're in a fortunate enough position to be a little opportunistic with the partnership opportunities that present themselves to us. As far as qualities in that B2B partnership, I think probably the most powerful thing that we can get out of the existing partnership is to produce something alongside the partner. This kind of ties back into the talking point that I had earlier about creating genuine kind of empathy and positive sentiment within the esports community. The best way to do that is to showcase that in coming together with another business or brand, that you're creating something to elevate either the community, the players, the infrastructure, that you're genuinely investing in the industry and the scene, and searching for that kind of collaborative mindset is definitely super, super important.
I'd like to target Frank with this next one because they're looking at the Corsair perspective specifically. How does Corsair partner with college programs? Is there support for up-and-coming programs as well?
Man, something I could talk about all day because college programs, to me, I'm mostly just looking to enable student activities. That's really why we're in the collegiate space at all. We just want college students to have positive experiences, and ways that we can make that happen. And of course, I have masters to keep happy. But I don't really as long as, similar to what I was saying earlier, as long as we're operating at scale, that's fine. We've done work with podcasts that have as few as maybe 100 listeners on average, but that doesn't really stop us as long as the activities and the things that we're doing are meeting up with the return. Really, as many things as you want to do in the college space, esports programs, clubs, facilities or land centers, event activations like this one. Thank you, Connect. We're really looking to do a lot. And as long as you have a compelling angle where we can get any kind of expected return, we're welcome to do anything. If you're interested in this more, I believe Carolyn Ye, who is speaking at the career panel later, is the one who's actually in charge of our student programs. And she is constantly looking for new opportunities with clubs, with events, with anything. So if you're ever interested in that, we have a special section of our website where you can look up student programs, apply for event support, apply for clubs, etc. And just let us know what you want to do, and chances are we'll be able to do it as long as we can operate at scale.
That is a really great idea to go check out the career fair later today, because it's for more than just students. If you guys want to go pick brains one-on-one in a Discord channel, it's a great opportunity. So please do make sure you take full advantage of it. Another question we had was related to the very weird 2020 that we have had. When you're building these relationships, we talked about network a little bit earlier. Has networking and building those relationships changed at all because of the just virtual aspect of the entire past year and beginning of this year? Who haven't we heard from yet? Would Garvey or Skye like to take a stab at this one?
I'd love to leave it to Skye. I see she has a big smile on her face, so I know she's got something absolutely wonderful to say.
Oh no, can we hear Skye?
Skye, you're muted.
Pain. that is the pandemic in 2020. No, I think in terms of pandemic, Gregory has probably experience in terms of how it's changed from a partnerships perspective. It is harder for one to network and outreach with a lot of these clients that we work with in that sense. So I think, it's been a tough year for a lot of us. However, being able to be on our feet and being nimble and changing, that course of route, to ensure that all of our clients are happy and, just in general, when it comes to networking, making sure that, we're able to work with those clients and speak to those clients at a non-in-person uh, I guess we're not going to be able to meet them in person, and we're not going to be able to have these awesome meetings in person. Being able to change everything to the virtual world, even though it has been a little bit difficult, I think we made it. It's 2021, hoping that things will get better in this year.
Mhm. Piggybacking off of that one, I know there are so many colleges and universities spread across North America. Do you think some of these partnerships roles that students are searching for, have they moved to remote? Do you think if a position based in California could be done by someone living in New York, have you seen a lot of those opportunities opening up because of 2020, 2021?
I think that's the only opportunities that's available right now, to be honest to you. The Twitch headquarters has been closed for almost a year now. And, we have no plans on bringing people in. So we're hiring remote, you know. I mean,
Mhm.
you have to kind of live within the circumstances that you're given and don't rail against things that you cannot change. And, companies that are agile enough, I think they can make it work. Um, it just takes a little extra effort for the remote employees to, again, qualify and quantify their inputs and outputs. It's very, very important that if you're working remote, that you still have solid input.
Great. And Frank, did you want to take a jab at that one
Yeah,
as well?
yeah. There's kind of a joke in Silicon Valley now. It's like what has kind of updated your company's digital communication and infrastructure, and the answer is COVID-19, because it's kind of forced a lot of businesses to think about the ways in which they're operating and really question, why were we doing it that way before, when they're able to completely transform the way their business operates and be fully remote, partially remote, and really kind of questioning a lot of the practices that are going on. And regardless of whether or not at the end of the pandemic, when hopefully eventually we're back to being able to meet in person, what is the actual answer for this? Like, we have people at my company that have actually moved away since it started and gone back to be closer with family. Even before the pandemic, there was a lot of things where people were kind of coming into the office maybe 2 days a week because they need to stay home with their kids or things of that nature. So I think this is really kind of updating and making people reevaluate the values they have as a business and thinking about better and more efficient ways to operate. In the esports space, especially, there are many fully online businesses that operate profitably and well and have great team cohesion. So I think that this is maybe the only regard in which COVID had a positive effect, because it really is driving a lot of positive change and making people look at work-life balance and other principles in the workplace.
So I don't think that there's any kind of detriment to working remote. I've been, again, in gaming into esports for 26 years. I have never, ever worked in an office. I've worked for 7 years now at Twitch remote, mostly because I travel so much. The Twitch student programs in 26 countries, will be in 50 countries by the end of the year. And I'm a big fan of being in person, sitting down, going through people's documents and business plans, and being of most service that I can, and building a rapport and a relationship to make sure that I have that empathy that Frank had mentioned earlier. But my entire career has been remote.
Mhm. I do have a more of a long-winded question, and I hate to pick on you again, Frank, but this one seems right in your wheelhouse.
All good.
So, do non-endemic companies have inflated valuations of the esports scene, or have they been more hesitant about working with esports in comparison to more traditional advertising methods and marketing channels?
I mean, yes and no is really the answer. In some ways, there is, a perception of esports value out there, and a lot of the endemics are kind of the ones that are setting the pricing and the feelings about what something is worth. But also, the worth of certain businesses of esports is going to be different from others, and a lot of that kind of depends on how easy it is for teams, tournament operators, etc., to integrate those brands as a business. Something like Corsair is very easy for teams to integrate because players need gear to play. Certain things, like for instance, car manufacturers, are a little bit more difficult, and by nature, those partnerships will be more valuable because of that. And I don't think that the addition of more non-endemics coming into the space is ruining anything for endemics or anything for that regard. But you also do see, because of COVID-19, a lot of the endemics have kind of been thriving as more people work from home and, have to use those types of devices. And the non-endemics, even though esports is doing really well, they're not able to, double down their investment as they were the last few years because their business hasn't been as successful. So you are seeing a little bit that correct itself, where they're not able to afford these large partnerships anymore just because the business is struggling a bit. So overall, I think that non-endemics coming into the space has been healthy, but it is something that we always have to be cognizant of. But usually, and it seems like, thankfully, the market is correcting itself over time.
Mhm. Well, if we have any last minute questions you guys want to squeeze into the Twitch chat, make sure you do. But before I forget, I would love to give you guys up here, the four of you, a chance to shout out anything cool you're working on, anything you want to talk about, or just, tell us something neat going on in your life, because I'm sure Garvey's got a lot of Garveyisms. But I'd like to do the same circular motion we did before, starting with Skye and then going up to Garvey, Frank, and Greg.
Yeah, in terms of TSM, we're really excited for 2021. We have a lot of awesome campaigns coming in, so keep an eye out in terms of that. And shouts out to UConnect for creating this amazing program to help college students get connected with the professional industries in the space. So I think that is it on my end. But yeah, thank you, Sarah, for even just facilitating this amazing panel.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, the only thing I'd like to talk about is we're revamping our Twitch student portal. So if you just Google Twitch student, it'll come up. We have a dedicated portal to Twitch student that we built in 2015. We're revamping it. It's going to give a way for students to identify themselves to the industry. It's really hard right now for the industry to support student programs because we just don't see how large the community is, how active they are, the amazing things they're doing. So we're trying to correct this, and it'll be a site now where once you identify as a student, we have a whole bunch of free giveaways, bits, and swag and stuff like that. But more importantly, we're going to have internships on there, and a lot of great information on other programs like the Corsair student, what's going on with Cloud9 and what they're doing in universities. We just want to make it a nice aggregate place where, and a lot of scholarships. We're going to have a ton of scholarships on the portal as well. And not only for content creators. Again, the purpose of the Twitch student program is to create a next generation of young professionals in the business of what we're doing in whatever aspect they would like to contribute. So we're just going to have a ton of information. We're going to have a ton of free giveaways. We're going to have a nice aggregate place exclusively for students, so they can get their feet on the ground. They understand what's in front of them. They have some support behind them. Besides that, we're just going to continue working with other student programs, more and more universities, more and more high schools, and just try to support as many people that are supporting the industry as possible. But stand up and have your voice heard. That's job one, I think.
Beautifully said, Garvey. Next Friday, actually, we're doing something called Corsair Day, where we're going to have a lot of different people come from different avenues of the company, talk about what their day-to-day is like, project managers, engineering, software, collegiate partnerships, all things involved. So make sure you drop by the Corsair Discord and check it out if you're looking to get into the industry. It'll be helpful, basically whatever company you end up, just hearing about these different positions interacting. There'll be some giveaways as well. Really valuable. Check that out. In addition, and the reason that we're doing this is we have our internships for next summer, or this summer, sorry, now that we're in 2021, live right now. If you want to check those out, go to corsair.com/careers and see if there's anything that you might be interested in, and come to the career workshop if you want to ask Carolyn more details about the internships. I'm really glad that UConnect put this on, and I'm super happy that we're able to reach more students more and more. That makes me personally really happy that we can help so many people.
Man, at this point, I feel like I'm just gilding the lily. First off, thanks to UConnect for kind of putting this on and bringing us all together. Definitely stay tuned for all of the amazing stuff that they've got coming up. I know Cloud9 is working closely with them, so check out the Cloud9 socials as well for future events that are upcoming. From a brand partnerships perspective, obviously shout out to all of our partners. They help us do everything that we do and make Cloud9 what it is and what fans love. So big shout out there. Definitely have a ton of campaigns coming up. Don't want to say too much. Want to keep it fresh for when it rolls out. But definitely stay tuned for a ton of cool stuff through 2021.
Cool stuff. You guys are the coolest. Thank you guys so much for joining me. It was an honor being up here, being able to moderate the discussion with you guys and then pass along all of the student questions. But that is the end of our 1 hour. I'm sad to see all 4 of you go. But everyone else watching, please stay tuned. We have the Arts and Graphics workshop up next. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.
Dylan, you're the best.